Hello, today I'll show you how to make a shooter game in Scratch. As you can see, this is a shooter game, and every time I eliminate an enemy, it will change the score. So let's get started. First, delete the cat and paint a sprite. Name it Player. Then, use the box tool, make the outline a good size, and fill any color you want. Now press Shift and create a box. Then use the line tool to create the eye. Duplicate it, place it about where you want it. Then name this Player. Duplicate this and name this Player Move. Select the eyes and shift it to the right. Now duplicate this one last time, name it Weapon, delete the eyes, select this, scale it so it looks like the hand of the player, then use the box tool, make sure there's no outline, and make the fill a dark gray to create something like this. Now, when green flag is clicked, create a few new variables named xpause for this sprite only, ypause for this sprite only, then x for this sprite only, y for this sprite only, then player speed for this sprite only. Now set player speed to 1, then set x pause and y pause to 0. Now after that, forever, and before the forever, switch costume to player. Now set rotation style to left and right. And finally, in the forever loop, forever go to create two new variables named scroll y for this sprite only and scroll x for this sprite. Actually, make them for all sprites. Scroll x for all sprites and scroll y for all sprites. Now, multiply and subtract. Scroll x subtracted by x position times -1. And do the same for scroll y and y position. Now, change scroll x by a divide, subtract x position subtracted by scroll x divided by 5, and do the same for scroll y. Now change x by and then multiply, subtract. Now key right arrow subtracted by key left arrow times player speed. Duplicate this, do it for y, key up arrow subtracted by key down arrow times player speed. Then point in direction, duplicate this, right arrow subtracted by left arrow times 90, and lastly switch costume to, duplicate this, add a plus, then absolute value of, we add 1, so absolute value of key right arrow subtracted by key left arrow plus 1. Now if you test it, as you can see, if you click the arrow keys, it'll do a nice moving animation. Now, change X pause by X and change Y pause by Y. And set X and Y by X and Y times 0.8, like this. Now, back up here, add in create a clone of myself. Now when I start as a clone, set rotation style to all around, then switch costume to weapon. Then now we're gonna reuse a variable, preferably X. Set X to 30, and since it's for this sprite only, it will also be for only this clone. Now, adding a forever, then dragging in go to block into stage, switch it to go to player, drag it back in player, now go to player, point towards mouse pointer, move by X, now change X by, divide, subtract, divide by 5, subtract by 30 subtracted by X. Now, create two new variables named hand X for all sprites and hand Y for all sprites. And then hand dir or hand direction for all sprites. Set hand dir to direction, duplicate this, set hand X to X position, and hand Y to Y position. And after that, add in a broadcast, new message, mouse down. And now in here, when I receive mouse down, we will check if not, and then player or costume name contains player. And if it doesn't, then if mouse down, wait until not mouse down, then change X by -5 and create a clone of, create a new variable named bullet. Use the box tool, make the fill a nice bright yellow color, and create it. And make it a good size. Name this bullet, duplicate it, name this flash, delete the bullet, use the circle tool, then select this gradient, make this nothing, and then keep the yellow, and drag out something like this. Now, go back in player, create a clone of bullet, and now, in bullet, when green flag is clicked, hide, then when I start as a clone, show. Then go to hand X and hand Y. Point in direction, hander. Then go to, actually don't go to, instead do move to make the flash go at about where the gun point is. Switch costume to flash, but before that, create two new variables named X for this sprite only and Y for this sprite only. Set X to Y X position plus X position plus scroll X. And do the same for Y. Y position plus scroll X. Now, after that, create another new variable named bullet speed for this sprite only. Set bullet speed to 20 for now. And now, go to back layer, switch costume to flash, wait 0 seconds just for it to show for a split second, and then switch costume back to bullet and change or move by -20 steps. Now, repeat 100 times, then a if, but before if, actually do a change X by multiply by bullet speed. Now, the sign of bullet speed, no, actually the sign of direction. Now change this, change Y by cosine of direction times bullet speed. Lastly, go back in player, drag in this part, delete all of that, and make sure you're in bullet so you can delete Y pause, X pause, and Y pause, and player speed, since you're not in the player. Now, scroll X subtracted by X and scroll Y subtracted by Y. So then if you set player's bullet speed to 1, oh yeah, and also make sure that there is a forever loop in the player when I receive mouse down. If not, costume contains player, then a forever loop, and then this. Now if you test it, as you can see, the bullets will scroll with the player until they've repeated 100 times. And at that point, delete this clone and change the bullet speed back to 20. Now, create a new, actually don't create a new sprite, duplicate the player, name it enemy, delete the weapon and move, select the player's costume, well, enemy's costume, press shift and rotate it 90 degrees clockwise, like this. Then, select all of it, change the outline to a darkish red and the fill to a full red. And if you want, use the line tool to create the angry eyebrows. Now, in here, delete all of this, and then only keep this, delete all of this, and all of this. And now you're left with this. Now when green flag is clicked in enemy, make sure to hide. Then rename player speed to enemy speed for the sprite only. Set enemy speed to 1. Then set X and set Y to 0. Now switch costume to enemy. Make sure to rename it to enemy. And now forever go to random position, point towards mouse pointer, actually point towards player, then move by -240 steps. Now if else pick random 1 to 10 equals 1, so there's a 1 in 10 chance of, and if that happens, set enemy speed to pick random 1 to 1.5. This will be the speedy enemy. And then set color to 100. Else, set enemy speed to 0.5 to 1 and clear graphic effects. Then create a clone of myself and then wait 0.05 seconds to 1 second. Now when I start as a clone, show. Then set X position to Y position plus scroll X, and do the same for Y pause. Now forever place it in here, point towards player. Now if distance to player is greater than 40, change X by the sign of direction, times enemy speed. Duplicate this, change by this time Y, change Y, and then cosine. Now, if touching enemy, which is possible by adding a if here, then touching enemy, then wait 0 seconds and delete this clone, and also drag touching enemy into enemy. Now if touching enemy, then duplicate this top part, then switch sine with cosine and cosine with sine. Now change X pause by X, and then Y pause by Y. And actually just drag in this part. Set X to X times 0.8 and same with Y. Then, if touching bullet, then create a new variable named score for this sprite, actually for all sprites, and if touching bullet, change score by 1. Then repeat 10 times, change ghost by 10. And also duplicate the go to scroll X subtracted by X pause. And lastly, delete this clone. And if you want, go into backdrops, use the box tool, make sure there's no outline, make the fill a nice grassy color, drag it out. Also, in player, make sure to have an invisible box by making the fill and outline nothing. So then the player can go out of the screen. And do the same for the enemy and bullet, and make sure in enemy to set rotation style to all around. Make sure that in here, instead of times by enemy speed, do a pick random -2 to 2, and then do the same for Y. And lastly, show score and drag it to the bottom like this. And now if you test it, and also make sure in player to set score to 0. And now if you test it, as you can see, if you click, the shooting works and the scoring system works. And if you gather a crowd like this, it won't create a giant, or actually not giant, but one singular point of just a bunch of enemies. So now you have a nice scrolling game in Scratch. Thank you for watching and have a fantastic day.